Welcome back to the podcast where we ask the question, what makes you happy? My name is Jake Pearson, and today we have with us a disability travel vlogger, Helen Lear-Grant from England. Well, born in England, but now in Scotland. Helen, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing really well, and I'm super excited for this episode. I feel like it's going to drop a real knowledge bomb here. So, what makes you happy?
My wheelchair. And I know that sounds a little bit strange because people often see a wheelchair as something that you are bound to or confined to or that limits your life. But for me, it's been a huge freedom.
In what way has it been a freedom for you?
Prior to having my wheelchair, so I can walk a little bit and wheel a bit. So prior to having my wheelchair, I couldn't get very far because I was relying on my legs, which aren't that great, and my life kind of stopped at my garden gate, or I could drive somewhere and get out of the car and have a look around, but I couldn't really walk too far. Now I have my wheelchair, I can really get an awful lot of places. Of course, the world isn't set up for accessibility and there are barriers, but I'm always up for a challenge. So, like recently, I got to the Callanish Stones on the Isle of Lewis, which I didn't think would be possible. But that was such an incredible experience that I couldn't have done if I didn't have my wheelchair.
That's incredible, and I guess that really ties into your happiness. Then, being able to get out to places that you once thought you weren't able to access.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially because what I class as like in a previous life, pre-disability, I traveled around Australia and New Zealand, lived in the back of a van, had all these adventures, and then wham, this big illness came in 2014 and put a stop on everything really. And I thought, how am I ever going to get back to being me again in this new body as it felt? But my wheelchair has helped me be me again. I've grown, of course, you're not static. I'm not who I was in the back of a van in 2011 in Australia, but yeah, I've grown and my wheelchair has helped me do that as well.
Yeah, and do you think by just having that wheelchair and that ability to go further than the front gate, you've connected with yourself on a deeper level again? Or what was that process there that allowed you to sort of become you again?
I think it's connecting, with the outdoors, with all of these places that really make me feel good. So getting to the coastline, and obviously I'm not going up any mountains or anything, but getting out to the coast, getting into forests, and just being amongst nature and really settling down into that and feeling connected to that.
Beautiful. And do you think, Helen, that would tie into some advice that you might give for some of the listeners who are struggling to find what makes them happy?
I think obviously I would say just to anyone who's struggling with their mobility, don't wait to get a mobility aid. Do it. It's going to change your life. But also on a wider perspective, I think that it kind of relates to accepting help when you need it. And you can still be independent, you can still be strong, and you can still be in charge of your own happiness. But sometimes you're going to need a little bit of help along the way, and that's fine. That's normal, and it's good to accept help, and people want to help as well. So yeah.
Beautifully said. I think I have felt in my own personal life that when I've accepted help and overcome that barrier, because sometimes that's a huge barrier, it's just swallowing the pride and asking for help, that my life has definitely improved in ways that I could not have foreseen. And that could have been like, there was an older guy at the gym and I asked for help, or I asked my parents for help as something I was really uncomfortable with, or my best friend, or even a sibling, or just someone around you. Reaching out, don't you think, is something that we as humans don't do enough of?
I absolutely agree. Yeah, I think we feel like we should be able to do everything by ourselves, and like we should be able to make it on our own, and that's not the case. I think that's a very modern thing. I think that's a modern way of looking at things. But if you look back to the past, it was all about community, all about supporting each other, and I think if we can get back to that and accept help in whatever form that comes in, and ask for help, then I think that can help lead us to happiness.
Weird take. I don't know why my brain goes to weird places, but I'm thinking, if humans weren't meant to ask people for help or need the support of other people, there wouldn't be many of us, because we wouldn't have grown to this extent. And we haven't grown to this extent by being by ourselves, but for relying on each other and existing and building each other up and pulling each other along. So I think it's a very important step that you take in your life to ask for help. It doesn't have to be drastic. You don't have to say, hey, I need help with everything, but just the smallest of problems for you, just getting another perspective sometimes is the most important thing you can do to help you get some clarity in your life.
I agree. Talking to people is often, the most powerful thing you can do.
Well, Helen, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing all things that make you happy. And if you'd love to connect with Helen and find out more about what is going on in her world, you can do so by checking out the podcast episode description below. All the links will be there to connect with Helen and follow along. Thanks for listening to the podcast. We hope it gives you something to think about on your quest to discover what makes you happy. Make sure to check out whatmakesyouhappypodcast.com to connect with today's guest and follow us on all our social media platforms and to stay up to date at what's happening next at What Makes You Happy. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend, and we'll see you next time.